All right. Good morning, everybody. This is thanks for being here. I know we're a few minutes starting a few minutes late. I know there's more people still headed up here. They're just running a few minutes late, so we'll see them trickle as they do. Again, thanks for being here. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to collaborate and to bolster our partnership on a very significant community problem. So thanks for being here this morning. We've had different people attend these meetings in the past, and just for a reminder of who everybody is in the room, I would like to go around the table again and please introduce yourself and name the organization that you represent. And let's just start on this side of the corner, and that'd be great. Thank you.
I'm Drew Cali, Administrative Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships.
I'm Erica Davis. I am the Chief Program Officer at Humankind Initiative.
I'm Alex Lee, Congressman.
Thank you, Tony Porter, Government Relations for the Wichita Regional Chamber. Thanks for inviting me.
Cindy Howerton, State Representative, District 9.
City Manager Bob Layton.
City Council. I can say anything I want now. City Council Brian.
Thank you, Brian. Again, I'm County Commissioner Jim Howell.
Ryan Beatty, Sedgwick County Commission.
Teresa, Lovelady with Health Core Clinic.
Nicole Eagle, State Rep, next District.
Michael Heisel, City Council.
Sarah Lopez, Sedgwick County.
Emil Berquist, State Rep, 91st District.
Sally Stang, City of Wichita Housing and Community Services.
Lieutenant Aaron Moses, Executive Officer for Wichita Police.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here. And in the audience, let's not forget there's some good folks behind us as well. So County Manager and some of his senior staff is with us this morning. And I'd like to just point out, I want to say thank you again for Alex Oakley for being here. It's such great to see the federal delegation here as well. Appreciate that. I know he'd been in Washington, so he can't personally be here. But thank you again. All right. With that, I want to say let's get an update this morning. Housing Director Sally Stang and Humankind CEO Latasha. What else is Latasha? Okay, here you are this morning. Thank you again. There's a lot going on. Today's a big day for the winter shelters. So let's find out what's going on. Let us know what we need to know today. Thank you. Please continue.
Sure. I mean, I'll start off. So we're really excited that today's the day the shelter is going to open. There have been some challenges along the way in getting things set up, but we're right on target. As we brought it to council early in November, we expected an end of November, beginning of December start. We hit December 1st, so kind of right on track. We had hoped to open a little sooner, and we're very, very thankful for Humankind for opening the other old building last week when the storm was coming. That was a little bit of chaos there right after Thanksgiving to make sure that people weren't caught out in the snow. Security, showers, there were things that we needed to work through, but I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Erica from Humankind, who can give more of an update as to where things stand.
Most definitely. So we are very excited to get things transitioned. We will be transitioning individuals that are at our current facility over to the new facility today for the first round of individuals coming in at 6 p.m. this evening. We will be rotating our door time between 6 through 9 this evening, and we'll go until March 31st. So very excited, have full staff, have hired in pretty much doubled our staff in a matter of days, and have 35 staff that have been added, and also working with getting security. Security will be inside the building, and we will have external. City of Wichita has worked and helped us ensuring that there's video surveillance in the building and outside. So all of those things are now set up, and we're just very excited to get jump started, and there's been so much work that has been done, being from community members coming in to help us set up, because it could not just be us alone to make this happen. And then also government entities helping. So we're just very thankful for this opportunity and ready to get started and get things rolling today.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like to clarify? Yes, sir. Two questions on this side. Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you guys for all your hard work getting this up and going. Today, I think a few of us are going by this afternoon to tour. Last week with the winter storm and getting the old shelter up and going in a limited amount of time was a great thing as well. Did you guys hit capacity?
And we were very close to.
Very close.
Very, very close to.
Okay, but we didn't have to turn anybody away or
No,
anything like
no,
that?
no.
Okay,
Thankfully, we did not, but we were stretching it on a few of the nights and we were very close to capacity.
okay. And in an instance that you guys did hit capacity, is there a protocol for individuals after that, or are we just trying to squeeze them in as much as we can?
It's kind of a non-issue because we didn't hit it.
Okay.
Yeah, we did not hit capacity, so there was no contingency plan that needed to be put in place, but we did have another facility that we
Okay.
could have put individuals in, but thankfully we
Yeah.
did not have to put that in place. The new facility, that will not be an issue as well. Yeah.
And with the new facility, I know security has been an issue. What is the security like at the old facility? Is it the same amount of security guards or?
Not have security.
You don't
So
have
that's
security. Okay.
one of the things that we're doing new to be good neighbors and really focus in on protecting that, our community in that neighborhood that we're going into is ensuring that we have internal and external security. We currently do not. It's only staff ran.
Okay.
Mhm.
And this question is for Sally or our city council members that are here. In a pinch, when we don't have security at the new facility, are we able to assign a PD officer of any kind to that facility?
I'll take that. We've had those discussions with humankind and city leadership. We can't, it's a challenge. So any last minute request for additional security or secondary employment, we would certainly make every effort to fill those positions. My understanding is that we don't have those concerns now. We've figured out security for the new shelter as far as a third-party security contractor. So we've really focused PD's attention on outside the facility and communicating with community members and groups in the area to make sure that everybody is on the same page as far as our role and how we can help the operation.
Okay. But in a pinch, if we can't have security there for one reason or another, that is an option we could try to utilize as a PD officer.
Yeah, and in fact, when we were in discussions about Thanksgiving weekend, I was on the phone with city leadership all weekend as well,
Okay.
trying to coordinate that and having the discussions of how do we open it, how do we distribute it, and how do we fill it. So we have those processes in place. Captain Rakestraw from Patrol North has a spreadsheet ready to go that we can send out to officers to sign up for secondary employment if that's a necessity.
Okay. And then how would that be? Would the city pay the freight of that officer, or would that be charged back to humankind, or what would that look like?
No, my understanding is that would be, well, I don't, yeah, it would come out of the program budget.
Okay. And then Sally, one last question. We've got all the transportation stuff figured out. Is that correct?
So yes, in addition to Wichita Transit adjusting Route 29 or 28 to also come by the Humankind campus, adding additional one later run and making that route free, Humankind has secured a private transportation service to do some shuttling. And Erica, you can.
Most definitely. We'll have a shuttle that will meet at the new facility and to bring individuals in to the downtown area on our campus. And then they will also be picking up individuals on our campus and taking them to the facility as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
And just follow up on that, if I may, one last, I know we discussed last time about some direct route, maybe to the Lord's Diner and back to the facility. Is there something that's at least close?
The pickup is 2 blocks away.
2 blocks away. Perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica. The old facility as opposed to the new facility, what was the capacity you had to prepare for in a short term on the old facility compared to what the capacity is prepared today?
We're talking about over 150 difference. So the facility at the old facility is 115, 114 that we were capped at, whereas the new facility is 250 that we can serve. Also, we also have to understand the old facility did not have the capacity to really support those because we have 2 restrooms, whereas the new facility, we have 4 in total with 6 bays in 2 of those. So we have the ability to serve more people, larger facility, community space, whereas the other facility, we don't have a community room space. It's just sleeping room only.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Question, Erica, what partners, nonprofit or service provider partners are currently active with HK? And will they all be going to the emergency winter shelter, or what services and who will be operating those services at the new shelter?
Great question, and I will tag Greer in as well. We have over 32 current partners that we currently work with at our facility. We have been working very hard, and Greer and her team and Latasha have been working very hard to secure partners that will be coming in. They will actually have office space that will be in. I do not want to miss every single person that is listed because I do not have the provider list with me, but we have medical service providers that will be in the facility. We also have partnerships with the VA that will be officing there, United Way, Miracles, to name a few. SAC will be there and actually have someone there full time. So we have an array of individuals that will be there providing service. There's a schedule that will be put in place. Everyone, all of the providers had an opportunity to come through the facility and set up their spaces yesterday. And obviously still welcoming individuals as they're coming in and continuing to welcome new partners as well if they are wanting to come and serve.
If those that do want to come and serve, or we just send them your guys' way? Is there a specific contact or?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Where would be the point of contact?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all the work you did in getting this thing going.
You bet.
Councilman, go ahead.
Erica, I understand we're going to have 3 meals a day at the facility, correct?
That is correct.
Are we anticipating a lot of transit back and forth for Lord's Diner?
I would not anticipate that just because of the location. But no,
Once you're there, why would you want to?
exactly. And we're serving meals and service providers will be there.
Okay.
So I would not anticipate that. However, the pickup time will be in such a time frame. If they did want to go to the Lord's Center first, they could and potentially get on the bus afterwards. So that is a potential. But we will be serving, each one of our meals will have 3 rotations in 30-minute increments so we can make sure that we serve everyone because we can't obviously serve 250 at the same time. So we just wanted to be very cognizant of that and have 3 rounds of meals for each meal. So breakfast will have 3, lunch 3, and dinner 3.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
A follow-up comment, if I may. Sally, what can we do with housing navigation from the emergency winter shelter? And do we have any capacity to try to connect people to what resources do remain for housing?
Yeah, one of those dedicated offices are my staff. So we're going to have 2 to 3 staff members there right now, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And then we have additional partners through the community that have promised to be there as well. So Open Door Ministries will be there. The VA and some other partners will also be there that provide housing navigation. United Way and has a housing navigator that will be there Monday through Friday as well.
Okay.
Great comments. Other questions or comments? Commissioner Beatty, you've been a great leader, and Commissioner Lopez as well on this topic. We've been talking about this a long time from the commission side. Yeah, I'm glad to see this winter shelter is largely solved for the moment. I know it's not going to be permanently solved, but we have a solution in place at the moment. So that's actually a huge accomplishment. So thank you for all the work you've done to get that done. I appreciate that. And I would like to also recognize City Council that's here today. They had a great role as well.
Oh, yeah.
So even though he's not in the room right now, Chairman Meissner has expressed his gratitude as well. And as I say, thank you to really everyone involved that's made this happen today. I missed the opportunity to say thank you to everyone. There is a presentation on MAC that's on our agenda this morning, and I don't know who's going to lead on that, but this is HFG Architecture in Petra.
So yes, thank you so much. As promised at the last time we met, we brought together the team that's working on the MAC. We have with us today Tylen Dyer from Petra. He is here as well as David Wright and Connor Christ from HFG Architecture and Brent Castillo from McCown Gordon. So they are absolute key members of the team. And Tylen, you want to kick it? Or David, are you kicking? David's kicking off? Great.
Good morning. My name is David Wright. I'm CEO of HFG Architecture. We work in the healthcare space, and this is an extension of healthcare in our community and improving health outcomes for our community. And usually as an architect, I start off with a budget and a program and a vision. We have a vision. We're working on the budget. We're going to talk about that today. And we're working on the components that are going to go in to the project that will hopefully have some long-term impact of solving some of the issues that you're working on in an emergent manner this winter. So the project involves several different components. Multi-agency center, or the MAC, as it's called, was the original idea. It's funded. The start of the funding was a $5 million grant, a home ARP grant. $5 million won't build the MAC, as we've started to get into it and understand what that really means. The $5 million is really seed money to develop a larger project that includes low-income housing and some non-congregate shelter space. And they're showing us two circles because they're very undefined. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. It's going to be dependent on how much funding comes together. We'll determine the number of units that we can build. The lower right image is just a diagram of the organization of some of the big pieces that we see going into the multi-agency center. Somebody mentioned security in the emergency shelter. Security is forefront in our minds, providing security for people who come in and for the community. So let's see, Connor, I'm going to have Connor, I'll have him come up and talk a little bit maybe about some of the details of what's going into the multi-agency center. We're seeing that that's probably going to be a 25 to 30,000 square foot building. That's what we anticipate at this point with the needs that have been identified. I might tell some of the things that are going to be in the.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is Connor Christ. I'm a planner and project architect at HSG. So what was it, a month ago? David had the opportunity to go to Bergen County and see Julia Orlando's facility, which was an incredible opportunity for him. And I think for our team retroactively to kind of learn about how her facility works. And we were actually able to get the floor plans for that to kind of give us a basis of what could be, and learn a little bit about the things that she liked and the things that she didn't like. So so this floor plan and kind of general layout is based on a lot of what she's doing. So you can have a central core where you can come in, main entrance intake where we have security, medical triage, and security office off of that main entrance area. And then straight in having intake, an opportunity to work through our HMIS system, get somebody once they're in the door to get into that process. And then that would be 24/7, no matter what, 24/7, somebody can come in, get intake, and get into the whole, not the whole facility, but the shelter piece of the facility. During the daytime, we'd have the multi-agency space available, where that would be similar to what we've got going on at the winter shelter. We have a lot of different groups coming in and providing their services, getting housing, getting ID, SAC, all of that spectrum of care could be delivered there as that whole wraparound service as part of the multi-agency space. It includes dining and day room as well. That would be available for all the people at the MAC. And then up on the second floor is where we're considering congregate shelter. And one of the things that we've learned through some of our meetings with folks like the Alliance of Overlooked Neighbors is that, and looking at what defines congregate shelter, it's kind of a fuzzy line. And I think one of the things that we really want to do with that is when we think about congregate shelters, it's a lot of times a lot of beds in one big room. And our hope with this is to learn from what Julia's done. And she kind of has these pods. It's like a 4-bed pod where 4 people can have a space that's defined, and they have a little bit of space of their own that gives them quite a bit of dignity and some little bit of storage for their own things. So we're really excited about that opportunity to learn from what's gone before us. And so that's a big piece of the layout at this point. These are just boxes at this point. We're still working on finalizing site. So this is very much a broad brush, starting to understand where things need to be in relation to each other as we go through the process.
So one of the things we've discovered is all of the different funding sources. There's a lot of restrictions on what we can build with each of the funding sources. And one of the things we've discovered is that congregate shelter space is not an allowable use of funds. And so that's a gap that that the project has. We've identified that we think that it would be a good thing to build along with the building because it stacks really neatly on top of the MAC and provides several steps into the process for those who have entered homelessness. And so we're going to talk some about that on the funding page. What we've modeled so far is we're thinking 50 to 100 beds of congregate shelter space that in a surge capacity could go up to somewhere around 200. So, one of the things that I hope, and what I saw in New Jersey in Julie Orlando's facility is that I was in the day room at Open Door yesterday. We had a meeting with them and it's fairly chaotic. There's a lot of folks outside, there's a lot of folks inside. And that same space in Julia's campus had a lot more calmness to it and fewer people for a community that was twice our size. That's 10 years of hard work that they've done in that community to solve some of these problems, which I hope 10 years from now we can look at. Hopefully we don't have to fully use the capacity except for the capacity of the new facility, except for in unique times of economic distress or in a really cold winter or just different extenuating circumstances. So we might talk a little bit about the next slide. I'm going to have Tylen come up and let you take it.
Awesome. Thanks, David. So I'm Tylen Dyer with Petra. So good to see everyone. Thanks for everything that you guys are doing. So as Petra, we're the lead developer, I guess. You have to have somebody that brings the entire team together. So Sally's amazing. Everyone else we've dealt with has just been awesome. HFG, McCowan Gordon, got a couple other team members, Parker Communities, and some other folks that are tied to some other pieces. We'll dig into that additionally. But this is the fun part, right? So this is the capital stack, as we call it. So from a development standpoint, we really love to focus on the capital stack. Where's the money coming from? What's it doing? And where do we go with it? So I'd like to really point out all the fantastic work that Sally's done on this, along with City Council and other folks from the city to get started. I'll start in this top box, and I'm sure you'll have 1,000 questions. You can interrupt me at any time. I am not very formal. I don't wear jackets very often. So just so we're all clear on that. So starting at the top, the 13 million. So Sally and her team, they've worked hard to start turning existing assets into dollars that can be utilized, right? So as David said, those dollars have restrictions. Every line item that you'll go through on this have restrictions, right? We've all been in this. We know what's going on there. So those dollars can't be used for certain things. The biggest use for those proceeds of sales has to be additional housing. All right. I'll talk more about that in just a second. The next one is the $5 million of home ARP funds, right? Which is exactly that seed money that David spoke to, gets this entire project going. It's exactly what it is seed money. There's also City of Wichita ARPA funds. That's kind of a number that's in flux right now. There's some dollars there. A lot is being used for the winter shelter, different items like that. So we'll figure out where that final number is. But if you just take a round number, which unfortunately, as you saw, part of HFG's big design is a couple big round numbers, right? And that's what we're trying to figure out because we don't have the site perfectly tied down. We don't have all the design done. We don't have all the partners to the table yet, right? That's just a continuous process. So knowing that, we kind of have a total of that 20 million. So if you're in the development game like we are every day, 20 million is a great start, right? You got a really good piece of the capital stack started. But as you guys know, with all the restrictions here, we'll go through this a little deeper. The need for operations, the larger facility is, the bigger the operations are, right? That's just how it is. A lot of these funds, actually every one of these funds cannot be used for operation. Therefore, building an entire capital stack is different than how we usually do it. We usually leverage everything we can in the development game. In this world, we can't, right? Leverage means debt payments. Debt payments means lower operations costs, higher operational costs. And it also drives more, deferred maintenance and all the stuff that we usually see that drives these things into the ground. We do not want this to spiral downwards. We want it to spiral upwards. It's exactly what we need in this. So going to the next deal, a big part that we brought to the team is trying to maximize those seed dollars that are already in place and make it as much as possible. So that actually just the entire green box, just so everybody knows, it's what we've either have applied for or we're in the process of applying for. So I'm sure there's additional things. That's the other thing we want to get out of today is anybody sees any holes in this, tell me what else we can apply for. If you see something that we haven't done, we would love to jump all over that. So we have a really good team that can get in the middle of that. But the first one is the LIHTC area. Everybody's familiar with low-income housing, I'm sure, in the room. If you're not, we can talk more about it afterwards. But right now, we believe with a certain census tract bumps, right? And you guys are familiar with those, that 29 million is approximately what we're able to capture on the LIHTC side. We will apply for that. We have not applied for that yet. We cannot apply for that until we have a site selected. We have to have a study done, all of that fun stuff that goes into that. So knowing that there's 29 million in there, we believe that's somewhere in the 180 units range, right? Now, this is housing. This is good, hard housing, right? So as you guys have probably heard, homelessness is a housing problem, right? So, and we can go deeper into that as you want. We have way too much knowledge on that. So that ties to the low income. The next one is the new market tax credits. So this is a fun item that Parker Communities brought to our team. Austin Parker leads that team. He just knows that world really, really well. And that's something that we've already applied for. We got the email, I believe it was earlier this week, saying, yes, you've passed the first part of the application. Now we have to go to the second part. So that's good news. Usually that leads in the right direction. Then the next one, there's 3.5 million that we are applying for on the home ARP funds, additional money from the state. So that takes care of the green portion of the box. So this part of that is just making sure everyone in the room, because everyone has political ties in 50 different ways, but we need all the help everybody can provide is shaking those trees and getting those dollars out of it. We really need that help because we are going to apply. We believe our applications are going to be great, but we also need the help. And we believe some of this is already earmarked, but you never know until the check comes in. So I'm going to skip over the orange one real quick. I'm going to go to the total need, right? So total need is about $79.5 million. And the half is a fun one, right? Because we spent a lot of time on this trying to get to the right number. And I believe it could be 80. I believe it could be 100. So if you really dig in, San Antonio built their campus 10 years ago for $100 million. Okay, San Antonio's, we're about 30% the size of San Antonio. So if you do some math and accelerated 10 years, all that fun stuff, it gets you right back where we're not grossly out of whack here, right? This is the right size to be. And this needs to continue to grow. We need the ability to expand. Everybody's not going to be on board day one. We're going to need additional space with our partners. So in this, as David mentioned, we have the MAC, which is that 25 to 30,000 square foot. That's what we believe today. I think that's going to grow. I think there's going to be additional space in there. Congregate shelter, which is the fun one, right? Because there is absolutely $0 out of anything above outside of that orange that could go to congregate shelter. That's something we're struggling with heavily. That's where the big gap is. Non-congregate shelter, of course, 50 plus beds, and then the LIHTC. So if you cross out the LIHTC portion at the bottom with the top line and the green box, those kind of cancel out, right? Then we've got a $50 million gap that we got to go fill, which is exactly what the rest of this is. So I can go in a little bit deeper. I can address questions, whatever you guys need.
I have just a couple of quick questions. We'll open this up to questions and comments for everyone here, but the colors are very pretty. I'm wondering, there's no intent to tie the first slide to the second slide in terms of the green on the one slide, do not apply to the green on the second slide.
Right. We just wanted to define them differently on this.
Sometimes I read into that. I want to make sure that that's not intended. Okay.
No, that is not. That would have been a good idea.
Yeah, I thought about it. I'll tell you that next time.
Yeah, thanks.
No, so, obviously this is not a total solution for everybody who's struggling with homelessness. What this is, and for people who enter the MAC, this is my own words. I'm sure other words, people can find other words as too. This is transitional stabilization and moving people towards independence. What this does is there is a true return on the investment. We have this way for people to get out of this challenge of life back into an independent, productive place in life in our community. So this represents that portion of a tool in the toolbox that gets them back to independence. And so that's, again, it's not going to be a full solution for everybody who's homeless in the community, or for those who want to get out of that difficult challenge and move to something that's stable and independent. This is the tool we need. And I think that, and maybe that's my misunderstanding. I think that's how I would describe this, but am I right about saying it that way?
Yeah, we agree. So the big piece to understand, to go additionally there, LIHTC is long-term, right? There's a lot of people who live in low-income housing. their entire life. So that's a good step. And there'll be additional housing that'll be supported by the 13 million on the top line.
And of course, the other things that are part of this are the stabilization. We talked about SAC as being part of this. So getting off drugs and alcohol, dealing with their addictions, mental health supports, job training, documentation they might need that, transportation, connecting them with job opportunities in the community, and then ultimately transition them to temporary housing and sometimes low income housing, but permanent housing. There is this transition that gets them step A, B, C, D, E, and all the way until they're independent. So this is a enormous resource for this community. It certainly is appropriate for what we're talking about. We're going to get into the 22 million here in a few minutes, but before we do that, I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions from the group here. So what questions and comments do you all have? Yeah.
So as I look at this, and I know the capacity in our community right now, we had to move from humankind's current space because they didn't have enough space, enough beds. And for the 79 million, we're going to get 100 beds with the opportunity to flex up to 200 beds for congregate housing. Is that so? Right now, we moved over to the new emergency shelter because 114 or 140 beds was not enough. And this shelter can provide 250 beds. So it looks like at 100 beds, and then the ability to have 200 is probably not going to be enough. And it looks like this may be 2 years down the line from here. So are we going to build the facility with not enough current space 2 years from now, knowing that we need more beds? And that's why we moved.
That is a great question. I think the historical numbers are somewhat less than 200. I'd have to look to the folks at Humankind.
Please.
Yeah, historically, and I am also looking at Cole, who is in the audience, who manages those numbers. And I'm sorry, historically, yes, but we are seeing it increase in our community on those that are experiencing homelessness.
So I think it's going to be critical and important that we look at future capacity needs for our community, because if we invest this amount of money in building, finding a site, a location, and we build out something that does not meet the needs of our community in the future, that's especially right now, we don't have the space now, and we've made an emergency move to create an emergency shelter that's barely meeting because you guys maxed out over after the snowstorm, and we're opening a new facility today, and then we're looking at what we're going to do next year. So I just want to make certain that there's enough space to really meet the needs of our of the future of our community.
The other piece on that too is there's non-congregate beds at the housing location.
Yes, let's go back a slide.
Yeah.
So yeah, the model shows up to 50 non-congregate beds, which might look like a studio apartment, but would be allocated as part of the low income housing supply that we're going to design.
So that's part of the 79.5 million.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I would say, actually, we usually like to have, kind of a prototype for what we're doing. And actually, we have the ideal situation this winter to test some things, I think, in the new emergency shelter. And we're going to watch that really closely, how it gets utilized. We're going to look at the numbers, how the agencies work together. I think it's actually a fortuitous thing in terms of the development of this project to have that experience this winter. And so I think that'll inform us a lot. I'm flexible. I think our team is flexible on the number of beds to some degree. I mean, we obviously are going to have a budget constraint, and the budget constraint might mean if we need more shelter beds, we build a few less low-income housing beds for apartments. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm Brent Castillo. I'm with McCown Gordon. I'm part of the team. That's a great question. Part of the big picture solution is that per Julia and our visit or David's visit to Bergen County is hopefully utilization will actually go down. And they'll have other services. Maybe they'll be in the LIHTC housing and receiving those other services. So the goal isn't just to keep growing it and just filling it, it's to move people through. So that's the bigger picture. That's part of the trick. I mean, that's part of the why we all have to come together. So I just want to draw that out too. So
Cole, did you want to respond to the question earlier?
I can talk a little bit about capacity. Each year we do the point in time count, which is where we count how many people are utilizing shelter and attempt to find everyone who's unhoused all across Sedgwick County and unsheltered. Part of that count, we also do a housing inventory count. So we basically check how many beds do we have in our community in emergency shelter and specifically victim service provider shelters, as well as transitional housing, and all the permanent housing that we have across the community that's funded through government entities. So HUD all the way to Wichita Sedgwick County's Housing First program. I can say our family beds, that's probably one of our strong suits because we have right now three different agencies that are covering family beds. Well, Humankind, Family Promise, and Catholic Charities. So they're all covering family beds. As long as our congregate shelter and the MAC is doing what it's supposed to do, which is pushing people through the system and getting into housing, and the homelessness task force is doing their job, and we're getting more housing built across the city. That way we actually can move people with the vouchers we have into housing. And we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and getting people off government assistance so they can be paying their own way so we can move that money to the next unhoused person. We don't need to build mega warehouses of people in emergency shelter. I don't think anyone really wants that, the people experiencing homelessness or the community. Our goal should really be making a comprehensive solution, which is what I think MAC is really shaping up to be, that's designed to move people from having nothing, unsheltered, unhoused, to having a place where they're living and thriving on their own.
Wow, yeah, cool.
Write that down. That was well done. Wow. All right. Other questions or comments?
David, go back to the budget slide.
Kelly.
So I want to make sure, I understand some of this math real quick. When you say that congregate shelter space is not an allowable use of funds, is that the three funds at the top? All three of those fund sources are not allowable for congregate, or is some breakdown of that allowable for congregate shelter space?
Let Sally answer that.
Only the 2 million in straight ARPA funds could be used for congregate. The 13 million and the 5 million are absolutely prohibited from being used for congregate.
I remember the part about the 13 million on the proceeds from sales, but I thought when we first went down this road, that ARP dollars were allowable use, but you're saying only the 2 million.
Only the 2 million. The home ARP funds can be used for the housing units, non-congregate shelter,
Okay.
but not congregate.
Okay.
A quick follow-up if I can, just on that. Congregate shelter was not a part of the original conversation. Okay, to clarify, if we don't have congregate shelter in this plan, we're going to have to go find congregate shelter elsewhere for emergency winter shelter, correct?
Correct. And
you have to be congregate shelter in this community.
actually, it was not the first home ARP planning. So when we brought in development services. Yes, when we got to the end discussion that we proposed to the council was after 7 months of stakeholder engagement. And we're having conversations going, this is great. We can have this center that's 24/7. And I can't hold non-congregate shelter beds or hold housing units for the person who walks in at 2 o'clock in the morning. We have to have a component of congregate shelter.
So that's kind of my point.
Yep.
I think as a community, we need to move in a way to where we can establish and find the funding that includes the congregate shelter piece. I know when we're talking about scalability and things of that sort, we're like, well, you know, we'll do these other things. And this is the resource center, obviously. And I think we've got to go full boat on to making sure that the congregate shelter is a piece of this.
So I have two questions. One, I think Cole, is that your name? It's Cole, answered about the families and how that worked. But the second, does this congregate shelter replace Humankind and the work they're doing in the community? Or would there be beds at both?
It could go either way. We have not yet identified until we have a site, and then we'll be doing an RFP for an operator.
So if they do 100 beds and we do 150 beds and
It's very possible. It's very possible they
okay.
could be part of the solution too.
Commissioner, I've got a few quick questions and then a couple of possibly longer answer questions. What was the square footage again that we were looking at?
The MAC, we're looking at 25 to 30,000 square feet in our current programming model.
Okay, and that's just the MAC. That's not including the housing piece.
That's correct.
Okay, and do we have any idea at all on the housing piece?
No, to speak
Yeah.
to that, we're shooting for 180 beds on the LIHTC portion alone. Those are somewhere between 900 to 1,000 square foot units. It's
And are we talking tiny homes? Is that what we're talking here? Or
No,
what does this look like?
So I would compare it to just to put it in everybody's mind, everybody's seen a standard 3-story garden style apartment complex. It's just something to put in your head. That's usually how that looks. Different cities approach it differently, right? We could go 10 stories high and fill it full. We don't believe that's the right approach in Wichita, but regardless, there's a lot of negotiation in there, but you're going to have about 1,000 square foot per unit just in your head, plus all the common space and walkways and all of that. And so there's quite a bit of square footage tied to that.
In these units, kitchenettes, are they okay?
Yeah, very standard apartments is exactly what.
And you said 180.
That's the plan.
Okay.
180, we believe that's what we can maximize with the funds and the application and all that. There's a lot of moving parts there right now, but that's where our hope is.
And there was references to Julia and New Jersey. What county was that? If we were to look
So
at
I can speak to that. Julie Orlando is a consultant that first was hired by United Way and the COC. She's a member of our development team, and she runs a center in Bergen County, New Jersey.
Bergen County. Okay.
Yeah, Hackensack, New Jersey. And they have a functional MAC stacked on top of it are their congregate beds.
Okay. And are there any other counties, cities that we can look at that kind of, I know San Antonio has their stuff, like any other kind of similar things that we're shooting for that's in operation right now?
Yeah, the other example I've been exposed to personally is I went on with a few people in the room, the city to city trip that we went to Colorado Springs.
Okay.
The Springs Rescue Mission has, I think, some components of this, not quite the same fashion as what we're proposing here, but there's some similarities.
Okay, thank you for that. And one last question. This may be for city folks. This may be for Sally. This may be for you guys, but operational costs. What, I guess, just ballpark it.
Oh, until we exactly know the scope, that's a challenge. We were looking at 2.2 million for operations of the MAC, and that was not inclusive of the congregate shelter piece at that time. The city council has put $500,000 in the 25, starting in 25. And part of the design in this is we're really hoping to build the housing units with no debt, so that the cash flow from the housing units can help support the operations. It's still not there. We still have work to do to try and identify additional funding for operations. We're also hoping that when we are bringing partners to the table to operate within the MAC, that they can bring some of their operational funding with them.
Right. And then time frame. What is the time frame of this?
Okay, so some of the funding sources, applications won't be complete until February or March. Is that fair? We need to know the size of what we're designing and be able to put some constraints around it. We'll start design in the spring, so March timeframe-ish. I think we could break ground probably in the fall on some part of the project. We haven't even talked phasing and how all that would work. And I think we're probably 2.5 year full development cycle. We haven't even sat down and really tried to schedule this out, but we would be sensitive to what's going on in the community, and if we can, just like people who are designing schools try to make sure their school projects are done before fall. We would probably try to make sure if we had a chance to meet a time frame, we would on parts of the project that would most benefit the community. I think we would work with that and keep that in mind.
And is the goal to stick this downtown?
I'm not ready to commit to a site. I mean, we're in the middle of site selection. We've been working really hard on the criteria. There's a lot of complicated pieces to it. And I'm going to let Sally, if she wants to say anything else, she's welcome to. But we plan to conclude that this month. In the month of December, we should be able to give a recommendation to City Council, I believe, later in the month.
So the team's been evaluating 10 sites. I think it's 10.
8 or 10.
8 or 10. A very complex matrix with lots of things taken into consideration: social determinants, economic determinants, even financial determinants for the project. We are narrowing that down as we go. We are hoping to bring to the council and the board of housing board a recommendation. We are really hoping to get there this month for us to be able to at least get an option on a site, so that we can start having conversations. We can't be talking about specific sites because you can imagine prices go through the roof out in public. So the minute we can move forward with an option on a site, then we can further. I have an idea of which site we're talking about. Does it include demo? Is it rehab of an existing building? All of those are such widely different things. Until we know what site we're talking about, we can't get into more details.
Okay, maybe I can ask it like this, and if you're able to answer, of the 10 sites you guys are looking at, roughly what percentage is downtown versus not downtown?
It depends on how you define downtown.
Yeah.
That's a great dodge. You would make a great politician. Let me tell you.
Representative, I'm sorry. Yeah. I would just say this, that I think that this is a detail that everybody wants to know, but it's also obvious that we don't want to cause conflict early in the process. I think what we need to do right now is talk about, let me ask a couple legitimate, really concerning questions here. He says in the green section there, have, will, ask, or apply for. Is it important for the decision makers on those grants to know that there's a plan for the 22 million? If we don't have a plan for the 22 million, how will they approach this? Is our success or failure on the have, will, apply for to be successful in those 3 categories? Does that depend in any way on us having a local plan for the 22 million?
In my opinion, no. Low-income housing tax credits have nothing to do with congregate shelter. The new market tax credits could be used for the non-congregate shelter. Doesn't necessarily have to have the congregate component, and the state home art funds are restricted from congregate shelter. So the project could move forward without the congregate shelter piece. I think that's a huge mistake, but it would not restrict us from receiving those funds if we didn't.
Okay, so one reason we're talking today is we wanted to create a partnership between city, county, and state. And actually, let me just also argue, I think the federal government is interested in this too. They may not be able to, have an act of Congress to solve this problem for us, but they do have grant monies that are involved in this at the federal level that flow down. And I mean, there are some helps, of course, nationally that we're certainly we love to have that help, whenever, however we can get that. But the partnership, I think, that's been lacking in the conversation is my personal opinion, that I think is fresh today, which I love this so much, is I think we see three governments, if you will, at the same table. And that's where I think that we are going to win if we continue doing this type of partnership. And so what we want to talk about today is that $22 million. Because I think for us to be really successful, we need to have a very effective strategy on the MAC. And again, I don't think it replaces what humankind does. It doesn't replace what any of the other potential shelters in the community are providing. That they're still needed, they're still necessary, they're still desired. They have a very important ministry to this community. But in terms of processing people from desperation to independence, that's what this does. And this 22 million is part of that discussion. So we want to talk about that piece today, because that's why we're here. And we want to know what is our ask to the state. We know that local government is going to have a long-term potential relationship with providers in the community to operate this facility or other things that are in the community. We're going to have an ongoing conversation after the capital is figured out, after the facility is realistic. It's once it's there, we still have discussions. I don't think we're going to ask the state. I don't think anybody here is intending to ask the state for long-term operational support in terms of what we would do at the local level. Through charitable donations and potential government supports. And those are discussions that have to happen in the future. What we're asking for today is the capital side.
Yes.
To get this thing moving forward. And that's why we want to talk about a letter today. We can talk about this in just a minute. There's a letter in front of you. If you're not ready yet, please review that. We need to talk about this letter. And I see that there's a few questions. I've said a few things. Representative Berquist, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, I do. I do. It's more of a logistical question about the 25 to 30,000 square feet base facility. Because we have city and county leaders here that are all in the business of, in addition to these kind of things, in the business of trying to grow community and to grow the job base and to grow the physical plant of the tax base. We don't have the footprint we hope to have in 10 years as far as the tax base, the people. And because of that, I think about, my question comes around the facility itself, the physical plant of the 25 to 30,000, we'll say, square feet. Does that have the ability to increase as need over years? Will it be modular enough that it can grow to a capacity of a city that's 400,000 rather than 350,000? Does it have? That's the general question.
I would say one of the core principles in our planning, we do lots of planning for different types of clients, is how do we think about what might happen in 10 years? And certainly that'll be forefront in our mind. To the design, I mean, part of it, we need to think about how a site impacts that. Can we expand the building on the site that we're looking at? So yes, I would say that would certainly be part of the planning, is an ability to expand the facility if needed.
Yes, and I want to clarify that I don't mean that we're going to have more homeless per capita, but that we as we grow, we'll have more opportunity for joblessness in a downturn. We'll have more opportunity for these new jobs that are hopefully coming. There's a few thousand jobs coming to high-tech jobs here in the near future, that we want to know that when things are different than they are today, that we'll be ready for that advent, not just traditional homeless on the street, but those that are suddenly finding themselves not capable of buying housing. So thanks.
So I would add one more thing to that. I think there's the taking care of the clients, having enough space to take care of the clients, but the service providers over the next 10 years, the nonprofit makeup of who is in the facility may totally change. It may need to expand. And I think having the flexibility to flex that part of the facility up to meet whatever a demand in 10 years might be, or 20 years, we need to be thinking about that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things we like to recognize, of course, this is not just a local problem here. This is a problem that's affecting the entire state of Kansas. Larger populated counties have bigger challenges. I think these problems tend to congregate at places where there are resources. And so Sedgwick County, I think, has maybe a greater share of the problem than maybe our surrounding counties, for example. So there are pockets in the state where this is a much larger challenge, I think. And with that in mind, we would like to ask the state of Kansas to consider some help to get us through this capital campaign. One thing that's not said in the letter specifically, but I'd like to we're asking for advice as well. This is not concrete. If there's a sentence that's missing, or if there's a word that you don't like, especially for our state delegate people, if you want us to make a minor edit to this in some way, or we're missing a point that needs to be made, please let us know that. It is our intent to get people to sign on to this letter, not just city and county, but maybe other municipalities around us. We talked about this at our SCAC meeting, the Sedgwick County Association of Cities meeting, just this last meeting, and there was a lot of interest in other 19 cities, if you will, signing on. There's a great interest, whether they do this as a city council or as individual members. They believe this is important. There are people outside of Sedgwick County in our region that believe this is really important. Our South Central delegation, I know that you guys care deeply about this challenge, and we are asking for some leadership. Help us navigate the legislative waters to get this thing in front of the governor. And with that in mind, by the way, we did invite the governor's office to participate today, to be in the room, and I think they were unable to make it today. I'd like to recognize the fact that I think that they're listening. We have their attention. They're aware of our discussion. And again, so we're not asking just for consideration for Sedgwick County alone. We're asking for consideration for a vision for the state of Kansas. We want to make sure we get some help, whether that's individually for this region or something much larger for the whole state of Kansas. We'd like the state to address this issue because they have some resources that needs to be considered. What's the best use of those monies? Is it a return that money to the taxpayers? That's certainly a discussion that's happening right now. Is it to take care of some unfinished business that is needed? That's what this is. The state could pay down some debt. There's a lot of things they could do, but to the extent that this is a huge need, the state has some resources. We'd like to make sure we get that message to the governor. Ideally, she put this in her base budget. That's what we really want, to have this in the base budget. So when it's presented to the legislature in January, that this is actually already built into the budget. So we'd like her to consider our need and actually put this in her budget to the legislature. Commissioner Mike's right.
He's on Zoom and can
Okay.
add a little color to the conversations that have taken place. Chairman, if you're on, you're welcome to add some context.
Well, thank you for obviously I've been watching these meetings. You guys you're doing a yo person's job of getting us to a finish line. Really, this is really good stuff. So anyway, I know that we have talked about what Commissioner Howe just mentioned. I know that that's been in play to try to include a budget item for something like this, and was able to make a preliminary reach out that I think we do have an opportunity based on all you've done. I think we're ahead of the game because we have a plan. You've got a diagram, you've got budget items. That's the kind of stuff that needs to be in a document or a quote letter to get ahead of the budget deadlines that the state has. I think it's like, the middle of December. So I think we're getting some positive reception and anticipation of a document or a letter from this combined group. And I encourage. I believe the more entities or signatures, the better regionally here in this area. Again, it's thanks to all the work that you all are doing. I think that the next big step is something we can all support, and then we all make our own contacts and requests in support of whatever this final document looks like. Thank you.
Chairman Meister, thank you for your comments, and that means a great deal to know that we have your passionate support behind us as well, and your leadership has been. We know that from Sedgwick County that you've been fully involved in the conversation amongst our commission. So thank you for that. So logistically, we would like to give an opportunity to tweak this letter, but ultimately what we're asking for is a partnership of support. So we can get this in front of the governor and ask for that type of support. We may not be successful, but I do know this from experience as a former legislator, that when you get very crisp in your requests, if you help define the policy, you become much more successful. And so what we'd like to do is help them with the narrative, help them with the specific requests, and to share our vision exactly what needs to be done here. So your slides were fantastic because it presents, if you will, an actual vision on paper to show what we're talking about. And we do have significant challenges. If we don't have the funding we need to do this the best way, it's going to take much longer to get there. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a return on the investment. We know that by doing this effectively, this actually solves a problem that I know our taxpayers, our constituents, care deeply about this problem. And they want to see something done. And that's what this is. We're serving the people by having this vision formulated and clarified and crisp request to the state legislature and especially to the governor's office. I saw a hand over here earlier, Representative Hoheisler. Did you have a question or comment?
I actually had a few questions, as always. Somebody with experience writing letters to the governor in the last few weeks. The city of Lawrence, Topeka, Salina, Hutch, Andover, they're signed on to this. Is that correct? Or is that just a?
We've reached out, established contacts, and they've all signaled that they would enjoy an opportunity to sign on to a joint letter.
Okay, perfect. That's great. And then the 50 million state funding ask, I guess, is what we're asking for here with the match, local match. How did we come up with the 50? Last time we were at 20. Are we just shooting for the stars?
I would add some color to that is we know what our need here is in this community, but Lawrence has a significant need. Johnson County has a need. Topeka has a need. Salina has a need. Hayes has a need. Hutch has a need. Wichita has a need. And this, in order to ask a request in the governor's baseline budget, we need to make sure that the entire state has the capacity to access that capital.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree on that.
Representative, let me also just throw in there that, I've talked to Representative Henry Helgerson about this a lot, having a local commitment to match some of the funding.
Yeah.
We talked about let me make up some new numbers here. The 82 to 18% ratio we talked about earlier. I just made that up just now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
That ratio is going to be.
That's what I'm pretty sure that's what we
agreed some local support to get to the 22 million. I don't think we're talking about asking the state for out of 50 million to give us 22 million. I don't think that's what we're saying. Now, if they would do that, that'd be great. I don't think that's reasonable. I think for them to say, we'll give you a large portion of what you need. We need to have some local support.
Yeah.
Give us that challenge back. We will work on a capital campaign locally if we need to do that. I would ask our community partners, our business community.
Yeah.
Look at Tony Porter. They want this problem solved too. So we would ask our business community and our private citizens to just step up and help us get that $22 million, whatever the shortfall is. Ultimately, the taxpayers could kick in some money, but we don't want to start there. What we want to do is right now is ask the state for what can you do to get us there? What's the shortfall? Challenge us to come up with the shortfall. We will do what we can.
I guess I'll follow up though. I mean, you did state that taxpayers can kick some in at the end. Well, the 50 million is taxpayer funds. I mean, at the end of the day, they're kicking in, whether it's the state or the county. But I agree with you 1000% of, again, I know Tony and I had spoken about capital campaign and the state loves to see that as well. And that's so much is like, look, we're literally bringing everybody together, local government, county, city, Democrats, Republicans, private industry. So the state can kick in some. I was just curious on that 50 million and the 60-40 match that we had agreed to, I believe a few
40
now. So thank you. I see nothing else wrong with the letter. I'd love to sign on and support and help any way I can.
And again, this is a vision. We have to start. You need a number on paper. We said 50.
Yeah.
Maybe it should be 60. Oh, maybe it should be 45. I don't know the right number, but we have 50 for a talking point. And again, that split of 18 to 80, 82% that we talked about earlier, that's just an idea. It can swing more in our favor if you'd like. That's fine.
82% on the city of Wichita kicking in is a lot of money.
Oh, no, the other way around, sir.
Oh.
Hey, Jim,
Oh, yes, please.
Just for clarification, in the fourth bullet point, I would just take out 10th and Market. I don't know that they're going to even know where that is or generalize that a little bit more like downtown area or whatever, just for, because I had to think about it for a second.
We have,
because you're sending it to the governor. She doesn't know the city like we know.
Our county communications director is in the room, so we're going to go ahead and allow her to capture our comments today.
And if I can point out, I will say that there are a number of the governor's and her staff that are from the city of Wichita, so they may.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe say street and Market Street. It threw me for a loop. That's just and then maybe just like I've said all along is data, like hard data, like how many homeless are we dealing with here, and like the increase over the last couple of years, or just some kind of data points, economic, like Commissioner Beatty's been talking about. I think that would be a good point to include in here, so they can see the magnitude of that. That's all.
Right. Yeah.
All right, other questions or comments?
Just one question here. Are we just interested in having governing bodies sign this letter, or do we want to extend it out to, for example, REAP or some other boards or organizations that might also have a little bit of sway here?
My thought on this is we don't want to take too long because we need to get it to the governor's office. But to the extent there's any organization or even maybe well-known, if Charles Koch wants to sign this, I would want a signature. Okay. I think there's someone out there that who is well-known that has some sway. However you want to consider, I would welcome anybody to sign on to this letter. I think this is one of those things. It shows the collaboration that we've worked through the last number of meetings we've been together. This is now the product of those meetings. If we have support from the business community, whether it be the chamber or it be a REAP or it be, again, or you're sitting here, SCAC or other cities, any way we can get a long list of supporters to this, it adds weight. So I would say yes.
I would also include, and I think this is an important note, that the governor's office is expecting the letter. The last thing we wanted to do, we want to really symbolize this is partnership here. So we didn't want them caught off guard. Here's a letter that just came certified mail. And they are very much aware that this is coming. They're very much aware of the community need. And we asked the timing. How much time do we have to do this? So December the 14th is when they're expecting the letter. So we need to actually, in my opinion, we need to rally the South Central delegation and get as many people that are willing to sign on this, cities, partners throughout the state. So, and our congressman too. There's going to be a request coming to our congressman to see if he would also sign off on this as well.
I know Commissioner Lopez has a comment. I want to say one thing about how to do this. The logistics of this is to physically take a piece of paper around this region to get those, I think, is unreasonable. So here's what I'd like to do. I would like these organizations to know the request and let them, we'll ask them to clarify in writing their support for this letter. And we will add their names to the list on their behalf. We'll have documentation saying they gave us their word. Here's what they provided support to the letter. They wanted us to add their name. We'll add their name. So when we provide this to the governor, we will have, if you will, evidence of all the support, but we don't necessarily need to actually take the piece of paper to that person and actually physically have them sign it, because logistically, we don't have time to do that. Right. But they need to know that we actually have proof or evidence of those people actually have given us their word that they support the letter. Yes, sir.
Commissioner, can we get this letter in email format?
Absolutely.
And then we will blast it out to South Central delegation.
Yes.
If anybody else that we would want to sign on, we can blast an email to them as well. But yeah, I would like to get this letter sent as soon as possible.
Could I ask those that are here today from the legislature, will you help us to walk this thing through with your peers and stuff?
Absolutely.
It's one thing to blast them a letter and with no context.
No,
I think we really need your guys' help to take this thing to them and make the calls and say, this is important.
Yeah.
And try to rally as much support.
No, we'll follow up. And real quick, I do want to recognize as well, we do have Representative Silas Miller online. Yeah. Just so folks are aware. But no, we'll follow up with them on this, but blasting them out in an email copy that they can physically see, and then follow up with a phone call or chat on this is what it is. Are you going to sign on?
I want to get back to Commissioner Lopez in just a second, and I haven't forgotten, and I see there's other questions. I want to say this. I would even ask the South Central delegation, if you guys can make a motion and vote on this and actually have, if you will, a delegation co-sponsorship as a delegation, that would be even better. If not, then individual legislators give us your name and we'll add your name to the list. That's one way to do it. But I would rather say that the delegation actually took this up as a delegation and has put their weight of their organization behind this as a group. That would be even better. Now, that goes along with every city council member, every mayor. If they could do this as a council, that's great. If they can't, but they want to add their name to as council member so-and-so or mayor so-and-so, that's totally fine. So now, Commissioner Lopez, I'm sorry about that, but please.
No,
please.
it's okay. I just wonder, I think it's really great that we have all these government organizations, but when we think about homelessness and mental health and all these things, it's really a public health crisis. So would it be helpful to get our medical community, state organizations, our FQHCs, would it be helpful to get them to sign on to this as well and have it be a whole community approach and not just governments kind of coming together, but really telling that story?
I agree. And again, even the business community, other these other organizations that have personally struggled. I think of our mental health, St. Joseph Hospital.
Yeah.
They have a great interest in seeing this happen, obviously. Our SCAC, I'm just tongue tied here, but never mind. I can't think of the right word. All right. So let's go on. Other comments, questions?
There's a hand raised.
Okay. Hand raised up on the Chairman Weitzner. We're not hearing you, sir.
Yes, just a quick comment about the 50 million number, Representative Hoheisel, that they kind of talked about it, but we know what our need is. But in order for this, we thought to have great momentum is we needed to help support whatever it is statewide. We and you all are way ahead, I believe, of. I know Lawrence and Topeka would like to do something, but I'm not sure I'm not sure they know what they want to do or could even provide a plan. So that's why we kind of threw a buffer number in there. I did talk to a couple of commissioners in Johnson County. Johnson County does not have a quote downtown. I think their point in time number is about 200 homeless that are spread out among their cities under bridges and stuff. But they also will be very supportive of this effort, knowing, and they mentioned that they're well aware that Lawrence and Topeka have challenges, and they were glad that they think that we're got a grasp on us. So my gut says we're ahead of the game, so that the number of 20 million in our gap is pretty clean, pretty clear, and understandable. I don't know that the rest of the state has that, but to get support statewide on a grant program, that's the background on that. So.
Okay, I appreciate that, Commissioner. One quick infrastructure and services. I think last time we were kind of just focusing it on the infrastructure piece, and not so much the services piece, because the state really isn't into the business of funding services. So are we asking this 50 million to be able to be used for services as well as infrastructure?
I'll speak from my perspective that I'm open to the legislature, what your guys' thought is. I see the most appropriate mechanism here is pretty narrow scope from the state and the governor's office for capital for infrastructure development, service development. I think this is a capital need for infrastructure. It's going to fall upon the local community to perform these services in partnerships that are already established and partnerships that are growing. But the big need right here is a narrow scope of infrastructure, capital for infrastructure development to give us the capacity to perform these services more efficiently.
See, I think that is a much cleaner ask of just infrastructure, the homelessness infrastructure grant, however we want to call that, because I think you start getting really murky when you get into the services side. So I mean, services, we can keep it in there. I won't oppose that, but I agree with you. I think we should really focus this on the infrastructure piece, and infrastructure can be anything. They need to expand a kitchen. They need more cots. They need stuff like that. Like infrastructure is all that, but it does get really murky within the state if we're funding services that are not one times. I mean, our appropriations chair, he likes one-time costs.
Sure.
And that's his big thing, not multi-year services.
And Sally, and correct me if you disagree, please do, open forum. But I think that, we get federal support for services through COC dollars. We get a lot of different things that we're doing here. It's my opinion, and I'm open to being wrong, but it's my opinion that we narrow the scope to the governor's office in the baseline budget, because there's legislative opportunities too that we need to talk about, and LIHTC credits and things of that sort. But to the governor's office baseline budget, I think it's more appropriate to narrow the scope for capital for infrastructure development of homelessness services.
I do agree. I think it keeps it cleaner. Okay. I mean, especially because other communities are in the same boat we are.
Right.
There aren't a lot of resources, especially on the congregate shelter side. That'll be the biggest ask. But I absolutely agree. Infrastructure makes sense.
I think there may have been a question or comment on this side first, and then I'll come back to Representative Brooklyn.
I just wanted to say that I kind of like the idea of striking that and services personally, but I think that will garner more support from legislators.
We're going to Representative Brooklyn, then Commissioner
Howard. Very minuscule thing, but it may clarify for people reading this letter that aren't the governor's office, and that is we respectfully request consideration for local municipalities within our state. Because as we're sending a letter from this area, it might tend to say local municipalities, the 20 large and small cities of Sedgwick County or something like that. So if it said in our state to receive. Okay, thank you.
Representative Howerton.
I think what Sally said was a good point to include in here, that there's not funding right now for congregate shelter, or not a source for that. And so that's a good point to make for the state to consider.
And to clarify, we're not talking operations funding. We're talking about capital
Right.
project support to get the resources in place that we need to make this happen.
It's a true gap. Yeah, it's a true gap.
Yeah.
We need to identify what that estimated cost would be. Because it's not identified.
You mean the operational?
No.
I mean,
Infrastructure for
So one of the things that will be included in the letter is something along the lines of what that spreadsheet demonstrated.
Yeah.
Correct.
It is listed on the updated history session, the 20 million is listed there for our area at least.
Yeah, Councilman, that's a great point. We will consider and have a conversation around internally about what it looks like to demonstrate that in the letter, include something of that sort into this letter, so they know that 22 million, exactly what we're asking for and what the need will go to.
In addition to this letter being emailed out, are we able to get that emailed out to us as well?
I'll let Sally.
Yeah, I have no problem. We'll just put draft on it.
It is draft. Please understand that's a draft.
Yeah, put draft on.
and I don't want someone to get too focused on, some of these things might change. Obviously, this is early, it's visionary. Things might change, but this is, again, trying to get things written down so we can have conversations what this is about. The numbers may be off a touch. And then again, the idea of location. I know that people want to know what location. I don't think we need you mentioned December. I know that's before the legislature gets busy in January, but I think that if we create, if you will, a loud voice of opposition to this because they feel like this is going to impact a particular community, that actually may be counterproductive. So we want to be very careful with how we, keep the focus on this need rather than on some details that might actually get us off track here.
Maybe that's where you put the funding, that just, if you do the line for the congregate funding, just put that there's no grants or something identified for that. Maybe that's just a general statement there. I just think that's a good point.
I'll get the councilman in just a second. I want to say also, I can imagine a cover letter to this, maybe 2 documents as an electronic format. 1 document or a cover letter. This would be to people who we're asking them to sign on. Our business community, our community providers. My coffee's kicking in now. I was trying to think of the word SAC. And of course, Robin Chadwick. Okay, she is tremendous. But these are people I'd love to see them sign on because they're so involved in what they do. But this is going to assist. This will help them do what they do because we'll come alongside. We're not going to replace what they do, but we're going to hopefully help them so much that they'll feel some relief because right now they're overwhelmed. Okay, so a cover letter that describes what we're asking people to do to sign on. It's too late at this point to change the draft. I mean, we're going to finish up this draft hopefully today and get it out and start getting support. So with your comments today, we hope to tweak this enough. We can get it a format out for actual consideration and start gaining support. And so we have Councilman Hoheisel, and maybe other questions again.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm okay with striking the services part of this. It sounds like that's where we're going anyways. I'm just curious, so in our talks with some of the other municipalities, have they expressed interest in perhaps using some of this for services?
And I was going to say, even having them put some of their history in here too, because it really seems South Central Kansas centric. So if they're signing off on it, can we incorporate their story?
That's a great idea. So we might have to take a few days to glean their information, but as long as they can get it to us, we can incorporate that. I think that's a good idea.
Sally, you might be able to give a little bit of context onto what other cities and services that has not been part of the conversation. They're waiting on seeing this draft. We're trying to think statewide and more of a macro level, but we're also what's fueling this is the need that we have here. And what we really think resonates most with the governor's baseline budget And again, there are dollars and grant dollars available for services through COC, through the federal government, through other sources and local sources. But this congregate shelter in particular is a significant gap. So that hasn't been part of the discussion. And I think if we include that into the part of the discussion to broaden the scope, I think this thing might get a little murky and more complicated.
It's actually pretty long right now. I mean, let me ask another, I guess a comment to that would be, say this. This is what communities experience. This is a typical list of challenges. This is how we would articulate the numbers behind what we're feeling here. You could translate this to any community and have similar statements. Okay. What we're asking for is for them to intervene and help us and helping us, if they would understand the same challenges exist other places, that same help offered to other places, if they're willing to partner up with local supports, they could also create a very similar tool in their toolbox, but they're going to have to step up as well. So we're leading a discussion. They can certainly use the conversation to help their community too, but to add too much more detail to this page 2 and then page 3 and 4, it may not make a better argument.
You can use this as a case study. So this could be a case study in Wichita. That could be expanded out.
I saw a hand over here. Yes, sir.
And I'd like to establish my signature as a seed. And as if any other legislators here can start that, whether we have the entire delegation or not, to know that there's a supportive body that's already been working in this, and mostly you guys.
Thank you. And along with that, Representative, I'd like to ask you to actually help us carry our message into the, again, I don't know what the governor will do. If this is in the base budget, we're going to have a bill. And I need someone, we need someone, we all need someone to help champion that. Again, bipartisan is better. If we can get some people to actually help carry the message, because you're better at this than we are. We can help write the bill, but we need you guys to help us. Wonderful.
We can reach out to our representatives in, Salina and Topeka and get them on board maybe.
Well, that'd be great. That's another great idea. Okay, there's more questions and comments. We've heard your recommendations for draft changes. I think we can incorporate all, and I'm sure we're going to review this. This is being recorded. We'll review this and hopefully get this thing cleaned up. We are going to have to pull the trigger on it and say, this is it, and get out a cover letter and get this out to all the people. We would like to say, would you consider supporting this? And if you can do this as a delegation, if you can do this as an organization, if you can do this as a council, that's better. If not, we would ask for individuals to sign up, say, I represent myself, but I think this is important. So we would like to, again, I like to see, again, a cover letter go out, the letter to the governor go out, some of the details we talked about here. It'd be nice to have 10 pages of support. Wouldn't it be great? We might get there. And I think it'd be hard for them to say no if there's that much support from this community.
Right. For the best point of contact, if we mention it to anybody or any group of people, who do they want to send their support directly to, their signature, rather than 5 agencies within the county and trying to gather together?
Absolutely.
Who would that be?
Tanya, I'm reaching back to Tanya Cole. Who do we send when they get people to say, we want to sign on to this draft letter? Who do they send that authorization to? Okay, we'll get an email address out, a formal email address out of where we can gather all those affirmations.
And if we can, at least delegation wise, I know Casey Hobson, our delegation chair, is not here today, but I can work with him. But if you guys want to send me state reps and state senators that want to sign on, I'll just compose a master list and then just get it to them in one master list. That way it's not one after another and some things fall through the crack.
We'll get you the cover letter that has the detail.
Yep. And we can do it like that as well. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Or we can use Vice Chair Howell and she can do it. Either way, that might be a little cleaner, at least on our side, because our delegation is 40 folks, I think. So
yeah. I would just suggest on that cover letter, we also put a deadline for responding, like, the 10th.
Well, we actually, for us to get this packaged up into the governor's office, I would assume we'll do that both physically and electronically, and maybe we'll even send a delegation up there to talk with her office. But we're going to do this every we possibly can, be successful to get this hopefully in her base budget. If not, we'll be engaging this through the legislative session. I do know there's also a possibility even during the session, there might be some people there that don't like this idea, and they may want to amend the budget by stripping this back out. Even if we are successful getting this in the budget, we may have to still be vigilant to keep it in the budget until the session is over. So until that budget is adopted by the House and by the Senate and then signed by the governor. So there's a lot of work to do here. Sedgwick County, I will just say this, Sedgwick County has been pretty good at getting stuff done with our legislative delegation and with our lobbyists. We've actually been pretty successful. And so I feel really good about where we are at the moment. We got to be driven to get this done by the right date. So your point is well taken. There has to be a deadline. Chairman Meitzer, you have your hand up again. Please speak, sir.
Thank you. I know this meeting's gone a little long. I don't know if you noticed, but Emily Thom is on the call, is zoomed in. She's the director of the Lord's Diner. I messaged her after there was a couple of comments about transportation and food. So Sally, can I have you and Emily talk just so she can have her hands around whatever it is that's related to Lord's Diner discussion.
And if I can follow up, my question was kind of in regard to last time we met, there was a shortage of food, I think a food issue going on. And that's where the suggestion I thought of, okay, well, if we can get folks down to Lord's Diner to eat and then come back to the shelter, like transportation wise, what does that look like?
Right.
So as we wrap this up today, we need to end the meetings. It's getting kind of long. Chairman Meitzer is correct. I think we know what we need to do. So everybody, please engage your opportunities the best you possibly can. Help us be successful. We're not going to schedule another one of these meetings on this topic, at least for now. I think we should do this in the future on other challenges. This has been a great experience. But I think what we normally do, the county, and I think the cities also does this. We do tend to meet with our South Central delegation naturally between now and when they start session in January. At that meeting, I would expect we'll probably have a brief discussion about where we are at kind of updated status. Once we get the letter to the governor, I would be glad to send out. I think we should be glad to send out kind of a status to everyone that signed on. Here's what we did. Your name's on this list, and here's where we are, and you'll be fully aware of what's going on. I'm sure this will be also be in the news, so we can all stay on track of what is actually happening and be fully aware. Okay.
So both the city and the county, will you guys be adding this to your legislative agendas?
Yes.
We do have the opportunity to add it to our joint agenda that the city, the county, REAP, and partnership share. We're still working on that.
Okay.
Chairman Meitzer, would you be able to speak to that at all?
Little transition. Okay.
Do you believe, Chairman Meitzer, that this is something we could do as added to our joint legislative?
And I didn't hear the question. It was too soft, but
go ahead. I'm sorry. She'll rephrase the question.
I was saying that we have not completed our joint legislative agenda with the city, the county, REAP, the chamber, and the partnership, and that it would not be too late to add it to that.
That'd be great. I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
Hey, Chairman Meitzner, can we get this on the REAP agenda for next week's meeting, possibly?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm looking around the room. Is any burning comments or questions? Okay, we have another hand up. Silas Miller, representative.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to take a second to thank you all from a personal perspective for working so hard on this. This is something really near and dear to my heart. I know quite a few people who are homeless or have been homeless. So this is a really, really important thing. And I look forward to working with you all more on getting this through the legislature and everything. And you can count on me for anything at all that you need. So
thanks. I want to say I commend Representative Miller. He has been tremendous on this topic, working with him, talking with him. He's very passionate about seeing some solution come forward. So I appreciate your support, sir. All right. Other comments, questions? Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that I'll be glad to take this letter and try to get the Wichita Chamber to sign off on it by the deadline. That may be the tricky part, but I'll also be glad to reach out to the other chambers in the areas that we're looking at and see if we can get them to sign on too in their particular communities.
Thank you. Commissioner Lopez and I both serve on the Hispanic Chamber, so I think we would do the same thing, ask them to participate there. We're on that board, so. Okay, we need to end the meeting. I hate to say, I know there's probably other comments and questions. Please hang out if you can. Network any questions or comments personally, and we will be in touch electronically. Thank you for all your participation. This has been a great experience. I appreciate you so much. We'll come together for future problems, I hope. If there's problems, let's come together once again But let's be successful in this one. Thank you guys for everything. We'll be
Thank you.
dismissed.